Well, hello Internet, and welcome to my COBOL video tutorial. In this one video, you're going to learn pretty much everything you could learn about COBOL in a 500-page book. And in the description is a massive cheat sheet that you can use. It's completely free to help you learn COBOL. And at the end of the tutorial, I'll show you how to install on Mac as well as Windows. And COBOL stands for Common Business Oriented Language, and it is the most rigidly structured language out there. It focuses mainly on data-oriented business applications, and many people believe that it is pointless to learn. However, those people are wrong. And at least in the United States, because 80% of all financial transactions are responsible because of COBOL code, 95% of ATM transactions, the entire Social Security Administration, the Department of Defense, and their payment system, which handles trillions of dollars, the Internal Revenue Service, as well as almost every U.S. state financial system is completely run on COBOL. And in this video, you're going to learn how to program in it. Now, like I said before, I show at the end of the video, you can go, there's also a table of contents in the comment section. You can go and click on those to install on Windows as well as Mac, but I'm just going to jump right into the code. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to save this file. This is Visual Studio Code, and this is a terminal. Everything works exactly the same on Windows and Mac. So I'm going to say save as, and I am just going to call this COBOL tut and end it with the extension COB and click on save. And now you're going to see there's a little line here. COBOL was basically created to match natural language, and a COBOL program is made up of paragraphs, sections, sentences, verbs, and other common speaking terms. What we're going to do here first is, because the first 6 characters are reserved for sequence numbers, which are used for organizing punch cards, and the 7th is reserved for a star, which would denote a comment, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to come in and type in source format free. And this is just going to allow you to avoid a lot of formatting and other different rules. Now, there are 4 main divisions, being the identification division. And I'm going to explain what every single thing here does. And we're going to put in here a program ID. And this will be COBOL tut. And this is going to be used for our code to refer to our program. We're also going to have an environment division, a data division, and a procedure division. Now, within your identification division, we're going to define our program ID. We could also come in and define the author and also the date that this program was written. And that would be April 21, 2020 in this situation. The environment division is going to contain environment information, being the computer that it is running on, devices that are available, and other country-specific information, which I'll get into in massive detail as the tutorial continues. And data is going to describe the data, and it is mainly going to have 4 sections, being a file section, working storage, and also linkage and report. Now, the file section, and there's going to be code underneath file section, is going to describe the data both sent as well as received from storage. The working storage section is going to define variables inside of your program. Linkage is going to define data available to other programs, and report is going to be used for generating reports. So now I'm going to do like a rough overview of some things you can do in COBOL and then expand upon that as we continue. Down inside of working storage, like I said, this is where you create your variables. There's a hierarchical sort of way of dealing with variables inside of COBOL, which I'll explain. But basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say username is my variable name. And then we define what's called a picture. And I'm going to put an X inside of here. What this means is that this is going to hold an alphanumeric value. And then I have to define its maximum length inside of parentheses. I can then assign a value to username. So I could put something like U inside of it. and then end that with a period. I'm also going to go and put some numerics inside of here. So to define a numeric, I'm going to go num1, and again, this is going to be a numeric, and this is saying that we are basically going to store values from 0 to 9 inside of here. If I put another 9 inside of there, that would allow me to have a maximum value of 99. But I only want values up to 9, so I'm going to leave it like that. I'm then going to put in value and zeros. And why don't I go and do another one of these, because I'm going to show you how to do arithmetic on values. I'm just going to call this number 2. And why don't I just go and define all these, and then I'll go back over exactly what all of them do. So I'm going to have total inside of here, and I'm going to say pick 99 value, and I'm going to give it a value of 0 to start off. And whenever I said about hierarchical values, the way you structure those, what I'm going to do here is model like a social security number. And how you do that is you start off with 0, 1, and then you go 0, 2. You don't have to go 2, but that's the way I like to do it. Some people use 5s, and I just want to stick with 1, 2, 3, 4 because I think that makes the most sense. Some people disagree, but whatever. Okay, so we're going to define, we have a maximum value. This is defining in a social security number the area in which a person is born. And then we have a special group number. I'm not going to get into the specifics of how social security numbers work, but basically that's what that is. And then there is a serial number as well. Okay, so this is the breakdown of a social security number. And these 4 individual numbers, when taken together, give you the total social security number. That's what I mean by hierarchical way of structuring data. And basically, there are 3 types of data, being numerics, alphanumerics, and alphabetic. And while you can declare a variable has a certain type, you can still assign other types to it. And it's mainly the programmer's responsibility to enforce types. And when I refer to numerics, like this is a numeric right here, and so is this guy right here, or total for here. These can be both signed floats or integers. And when I say float, I mean that it can contain decimal values. And you could also come in here and define constants just by saying O1. And let's say we want to do something like pi value and say constant as 3.14. There's a constant for you. And there are figurative constants. This is a figurative constant right here, zeros. But you could actually, and this is how you put a comment inside, just put a star like that. There you go. That's a comment. And there are no multi-line comments. And you could either type in zeros, or you can type in 0, or you could type in zeros like that. And that would just represent a 0 value. You're also, and we will be using space as well as space is, and that's just going to assign a space. We're also going to have high value as a figurative constant, and you can also type in high values. This is going to represent the largest value of whatever the defined type is. And then also you're going to have low value as well as low values. Either one's the same. And low values is going to assign the smallest value of a defined type. Okay, so those are figurative constants, and there are other ones that we'll see later. Now down in the procedure division, and you can tab in or not, doesn't matter, it's up to you. Let's say we would want to print out to the screen or display a string. So we could say something like, what is your name? And put a space. Now, if you put that inside of there, you are going to just display what is your name and then get a new line. If you don't want to go to a new line, you can say with no advancing, and it won't have a new line. If you want to accept a value from the user, you can just type in accept, and we're going to store that value that they passed inside into username. That's how easy that is. Now we can go and concatenate this information or combine it by saying something like hello and a space, and then outside of there we can type in, why do I keep doing that? There we go, username, and that will say hello to our user. Every COBOL program is going to end with stop run, And it doesn't have to be the very last statement, as you will see later. But you're going to have stop run, and then you're going to have a new line, and that is going to end your COBOL program. So we can save that, and I'll show you how to go and execute it. Or first, we're going to actually compile it. So after you install COBOL, you're going to type in COBC with a space and a dash and an X, and then the name of your program. So COBOL tut.cob, like that. Hit enter. And then you're going to come in and just do a dot and a forward slash and COBOL tut. What is your name? And I can go and type something inside of there, like Derek. And it says, hello, Derek. Okay, so there you go. Now you're able to receive information as well as display new information. Now, if you want to move a value into a variable, I'm going to show you how you can do that. You could say move 0, and or you could type in 0, 2, and username. And you're allowed to do that even though this is, well, it's defined as an alphanumeric, so you can put numbers inside of there or anything you'd like. And then we could come in and say display username. And of course, it'll print that out. Now I'm going to show you how to do some math. So I'm going to say something like display, enter 2 values to sum. And here I'll let it go to a new line. So I'm going to say except, and I'm going to store that value in num1. I'm going to do the same thing again for number 2. And we can use compute. There's multiple different ways to do calculations. So let's say we want to go and store inside of total the value of num1 plus the value of num2. That's how easy that is. Now we can come in and display on our screen num1 plus num2 is equal to total, right like that. And before I execute this, I'm going to do the rest of it as well. Let's say that we would want the user to enter in their social security number. So you can say something like display, enter your social security number. We could then come in and accept and store it inside of our variable. And then let's say we just want to display the area where the user that is defined inside the social security number. We can just say area and SS area. And you can see SS area is right here. That's the first part of that number. Go, compile, and run. What is your name? I can say my name again, and hello. And you can see it filled up the username with all zeros for all 30 spaces, I think. Yeah, 30 spaces, and that's what you're seeing there. And then here it says enter 2 values as sum, and I can just type in 4 and 5. You can see our total that comes out. You can also see there's a leading 0. I'm going to show you how to change that later on. And you get a leading 0 because we defined that there's going to be 2 digits inside of total. Enter your social security number, and I can go, there's my social security number. And there you can see the area pops up, which is just the first 3 digits. All right, so that's just a quick rundown of a whole bunch of things we can do in COBOL. And now I'm going to get into more specifics. Okay, so I'm going to do a lot of things with variables and math and a whole bunch of other different things. You can see all the code that's right there. Okay, so what I want to do here first is define an alphanumeric. So I'm going to say 0, 1. And like I said before, this is called the picture clause. And I'm going to say sample data is the name of my variable. And you type in pic. This is an alphanumeric because you see the X. It's going to have a maximum length of 10. And I'm going to give it a value of stuff. And basically X just means any of the keys on your keyboard. Now we can also say that we only want to accept letters and spaces. So I'm going to say just letters by going pic, and then we can go AAA and assign a default value of ABC and throw a period there and a period there. Let's go and define some more. Let's say we just want nums. However, I want to reiterate the fact that COBOL isn't a typed language, and it's your responsibility as the programmer to enforce type. Let's say I wanted to have a number that is going to be 4 in length, I can just put the parentheses inside of there and 4 instead of typing out 4 nines. And I can go throw value 1, 2, 3, 4. We can go and define signed numbers. I'm going to call this signed integer and pick and throw an S inside of there and a 9. And we'll say 4 values again. And here I'll say value negative 1, 2, 3, 4. We're also going to be able to work with floating point values. So I'm going to say paycheck and pick. And let's say we have 4 values inside of there. And then I can define how many decimal places. So V is how you do that. And then 9, 9. And let's say that I have nothing inside of there. I'm going to say value and zeros. And let's go and create a group item, which, like I said, is a collection of values. So we can say something like, let's say we want to model a customer, O2, and identification number. And I can say pick 9. We'll say we'll have 3 values inside of there. And we're also going to store the customer name and pick alphanumeric. Let's say it's 20 in length. And we can even go deeper with the hierarchy. I can go date of birth, and then inside of here, say I'll put 03 inside of there, month of birth, and pick 99, and day of birth, and pick 99, and then year of birth, pick, and we'll say 9, and say there's 4 values inside of there. And then I'm going to go and create a whole bunch more of integers. So I'm going to say num1, pick 9, and I'm going to give it a value of 5. And I'm going to create a whole bunch of these. So I'm going to copy this, paste that in there, and change this to 2, change this to 3, and I'll change this to 4, and change this to 3. I'm going to have answer. And this is going to be a pick, and I'm going to say that it's signed 99 and 2 decimal places. Give it a default value of 0. And then I'm going to also show you how to get remainders. So I'm going to type in rem and pick 9v99. All right, so a whole bunch of different variables all stored in working storage. Now down inside of the procedure division, write a whole bunch of code. Now, like I said, move is going to be used to assign values. So I will say, let's call this more stuff. I'm going to put that inside of sample data. And move, I can also go throw 1, 2, 3 inside of there. 2, again, sample data. And we're going to be able to come in and type in numerics in alphanumerics. 1, 2, 3. Once again, 2, sample data. And let's go and display sample data. And let's also display paycheck. And then let's go and create a customer. So I'm going to say move. And you have to, whenever you are entering information into the customer on one line, you have to accommodate all of the spaces. So we have 1, 2, 3. Here's our customer. That's going to be the identification number. And you can see there's 3 spaces. But then for the customer name, we have 20. So what I'm going to do is to go 1, 2, 3. It's going to take up the first 3 spaces. I'm not going to put a space inside of there. I'm then going to type in Bob Smith. But then I have to accommodate the 20 spaces. Now there's easier ways around this, like using accept and moves and all these other different things, which we'll see. But if you want to do it in one line, this is the way it has to be done. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now I'm going to put in the month of the birth as well as the day, and then finally the year. And I'm going to put this in customer, right like that. Now what I'll be able to do is come in and say display customer name as well as display, and I could say month of birth and throw in additional information. So date of birth with the forward slashes and year of birth. Let's go and compile this and let's run it. And you can see how that information got printed out on the screen. I actually wanted this to be customer name though. So you can see there's customer name, and I'm going to type in cust name. And if we run it, you can see we got it. All right, so good stuff. Let's go and talk some more about figurative constants. Let's say we want to move all zeros into sample data. Just go move 0 to sample data. We could display that if we'd like. We could also go and put spaces in every single space available for that. So we can say move with space to sample data. We could go and put in a question mark in every space with high value to sample data. We could do the same with, well, let's go. I'm going to go and print a display for each of these so you can see what they look like. Do the same thing for low value. Throw that in there. And low value is actually going to be a space in every space. So we'll change this to low. We could throw a quote in every space. Let's just go and copy this, change this to quote. And you can also go and define a value you want inside of it. So you could say something like move all spaces and put 2's inside of there. Run it. And you can see all those things as I described them. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do some math. A couple different ways to work with math. You could say something like, I showed you compute before, now I'm going to show you add. So you could say add num1 to num2, and then with giving, define where you want the answer to go. And we're going to be able to do the same with a whole bunch of other different operators. So let's just paste this inside of here, and I could type in subtract and multiply. Let's go and put multiply in there, and divide. You're also going to be able to get the quotient as well as the remainder separately with divide. So we can just go and copy divide here, paste that there, and then we're going to say giving answer and remainder and rem. And then come down and say display remainder and follow that up with our remainder. Whoops, in my hurry to get this copy and paste and done here, forgot that for subtract instead of to, you're going to type in from. Remember, everything is based off of language. For multiply, we're going to say by. And for divide, we're going to say into and then into. And now if we run it, you're going to see that remainder prints out there. I didn't print out all these other different guys. I could go and do display answer, of course, and just copy and paste that into all these different guys if we'd like, just so you can see what that looks like. And there you can see all the different values that printed out. All right, so good stuff. We're also going to be able to work with multiple variables at the same time. So I'm going to be able to say add num1 and num2 to num3, giving, and put whatever the value is inside of answer. And likewise, you could come in and even shorten this more, going like this, and then throwing a comma inside of there, and display answer. And as we saw before, we can use compute if we want to use a more traditional way of calculating. Answer is equal to and num1 plus num2, and then we could do this using multiple different operators. So minus and multiplication and division and display answer. We can get the power by going compute answer equal to, and we can do num1 to the power of 2, display answer. And we can use parentheses as well. So compute and get answer is equal to 3 plus 5 times 5, display answer, and then just change this up slightly. And by changing it up, I mean get rid of the parentheses. And why don't we go and do a couple more of these. You can also round values. So I can say compute answer rounded is equal to 3.0 plus 2.005, and you're going to see some other neat, very precise calculations done later. And if we run it, you're going to see everything out on the screen. All right, so cool stuff. And now I'm going to show you how you can do some pretty cool things with conditionals and make your programs a lot more interactive. All right, so what we're going to do here first is I'm going to show you how to define a custom data classification. And you do this inside of the environment division. And you type in configuration section. Remember I said I was going to get into more of these different parts. We can say special names and class, and we're going to define that a passing score is going to be a grade of an A through a grade of a C as well as D. Okay, so there is that guy, and I'm going to put a period at the end there, and we'll use that a little bit later. Then down inside of my data division and in our working storage section, I'm going to leave file there even though we're not using it right now because we will be using it later. I'm going to go and define age, and it's going to hold up to 2 values, and it's going to have a default value of 0. I am going to go and define grade, again, 2 values. Default value is 0, or I could put zeros if I felt like typing that out. I'm going to have score. This is going to be an alphanumeric. It's going to have 1, and I'm going to give it a default value of B. I'm then going to define a hierarchical variable. So I'm going to say can vote flag, and this is going to be sort of a way to work with Boolean values, which are going to be true or false. And I'll say value there. And then you need to use 88 here, however. And this is a way to set a condition to a variable by using the 88. So we're going to say that condition is either going to be, can they vote? In that situation, it would be 1, and otherwise they can't vote, which is going to have a value of 0. Another variable, let's go and do something. This is going to be used with evaluate, which we'll see here in a minute. But I'm going to say, I'm going to have test number, and we're going to be able to classify values. So I'm going to say alphanumeric, and 88 can also be used for designating multiple values here. So is prime, and we will define the values that would be prime. So we'll say 1 and 3, 5 and 7, because we're only dealing with single values here. I'm going to go and copy this. Like I said, dealing with conditions here. We'll say is odd, and for this I just need to add 9 to the end of this. Covers all my odd values. Also going to have is even, and here we have to change all these values. So I'll say 2, 4, 6 and 8. And we could also go and define less than 5. And here we'll say 1, and then get rid of all this stuff and type in through to work with a range. That would be 4. And then we'll say a number, and we'll say 0 through and 9 would work for that. All right, so there we go. Now let's go and use this stuff down inside the procedure division. So let's say we wanted to perform different actions depending upon a condition. Well, we could say to our user that we want them to enter their age. So we'll say enter age. And do you remember how to skip jumping to a new line? You type in with no advancing. And then we're going to go and accept that value, and what we're going to accept it into is age. Then we can say if age is greater than 18, well then we will define what we want to do. And what we'll do is we will, I want to go and indent this. I like indenting that. So I'm going to say you can vote. Else, if that condition's false, well then we'll say display you can't vote. And then after you do all that, you have to say and if Come over here and we can start running this. Whoops. And I got an error because I forgot to put a quote there. There, now it'll work. Run it, enter your age, and I could say 18, you can't vote. And I can go and run this again. Enter age, 89, you can vote. All right. Then we're going to do more sophisticated things there than that, however. One thing to be aware of is else if statements are available. However, they should be avoided because it creates sort of messy code, and COBOL does not like messy code. So the different logical and conditional operators you have available to you, of course, pretty much everything that you would expect. You're going to be able to do less than, you're going to be able to do greater than, you're going to be able to do equals to. You're also going to be able to type in, I guess I should show you this. So we're going to have less than, or you could actually type out less than like that. You're going to be able to type in greater than like this, or greater than, equal, or you could do and say equal to. We could also come in and say not equal to, and I'll show you some other different logical operators as well. Let's just get rid of this. So we could say something like if age is less than 5, then, and what I'm going to do here is decide what grade somebody should go to based off of age. So I'm going to say stay home. And then I'm going to say and if. Like I said, you can use else if, but it's to be avoided. Then I'm going to say if age is equal to 5, then display go to kindergarten. And again, and if. Create some other conditions. We can say if age is greater than 5 and age is less than 18, and you can see we used and here, which is a logical operator to combine both conditions. Then, in that situation, I'm going to compute the grade that they should go to. So I'll say compute grade is equal to age minus 5. And then we can display go to grade, and then whatever the grade is. And then we have to end our if block with end if again. And let's go into another one. You're also going to be able to use less than or equal to, as well as greater than and equal to. So I'm going to say if age, and you can type in greater than or equal. So you can pretty much type out everything in normal language to 18. Well, then I'll say display go to college. And if. Here, compile, run, enter age, and I'll say 19. You can vote, and also go to college shows up. All right, cool stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about classification and how it works. Now, if you remember, up here, we went and we had a score, which was given the value of B. And up here, we created a classification where the class of a passing score is any letter between A and C as well as D. So let's come down here and use that. So we're just going to say if score is passing score, then, and then define what happens. So we'll say display you passed. And then we'll say else and display you failed, and if. All right, let's do a couple other ones here though. Now, there are also built-in classifications, and those built-in classifications are numeric and alphabetic, and I think it's quite clear what all these mean. And there is alphabetic lower, and there's alphabetic upper. And there we are. So there's some of those. And what I can do is I can test this. I can say if score is, and I could also say is not numeric, then, and we could come in and say display not a number, and if. And let's do a couple more. I also want to talk about how we can set toggle values. Now remember, up inside of here, we went and designed a Boolean, which is going to be like, can a person vote based off of age? And we have can vote and can't vote as a possible option. Well, let's come down here and see how that would work. So I'm going to say, if age is greater than 18, then I want to set can vote to true. And you could also type true, but it likes to switch case on me here. Else, and let's get the else over here. The other option is can't vote, and we'll set that to true. And if, and then we can say display and vote, and then we can call the can vote flag to output that. Let's go see what some of this code does. Compile it, run it, enter age, and I'm going to put 19. You can see all the information we have here. You can see also that I passed with a B. You can see here, not a number came back for our check if score is not numeric. And we see here that voting comes back as 1 or true because I am 19 years old. All right. Now what I want to do is talk about how evaluate works. Now we're going to evaluate a value. Up inside of here, we set this guy up where we have our test number. And depending upon what the value is, we are going to have whether it is prime, odd, even, less than 5, or if it is just a number. So let's see how we can use evaluate. Basically, evaluate's going to perform certain actions based on which value is assigned to a variable. So we will say display, enter, single, number, or X to exit. And I'm going to show you how to do some more interactive coding. So we're going to say accept, and we will get our test number. And then I'm going to show you our first example here of a loop. And what we're going to do here, and I'll get more into looping in a minute. So we have, I want to perform until not a number. So we're going to continue cycling through this until they give us a value of X or something that is not a number. And then what we'll do is use evaluate true when and give a condition. So the number they entered, if it is prime, if it fits within that classification, well then I'm just going to print prime out onto the screen. And just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to go like this. And let's go and handle the other classifications. So I'm going to say is odd, and in that situation, print odd out onto the screen. And we can do this with all of our different classifications. So is even, guess what we're going to type out? We're going to say even in a situation in which it is less than 5. We're going to display less than 5. And then what we can do is handle the default, and how we handle the default is to say when other, well, we want to display default action or whatever we would want to type there. And then after we do that, after we handle this evaluation, we can come down inside of here and say end evaluate, and then we can call to accept another number to test. And this will continue once again until they enter something that doesn't translate as a number. And then to end our looping structure here, we will say end perform. And if we come in here, execute, run this, enter age, I can put 19, we saw that. And then you see right here where it says enter a single number or where X to exit. Well, I can come in and I can say 1, that comes back as prime, 2, even, 3, prime. We can try 9, odd, and so forth and so on. And then I'll hit X, and then it cancels. All right, so some cool stuff. And now what I would like to do is talk about some different ways we can use paragraphs to subdivide our code. Okay, so COBOL basically uses something that is called gravity-driven programming. And by that, what it means is as we work through our code, basically the execution is going to take place by falling through the code until either a condition or a goto redirects the code to another part of our file. So what we're going to do here first is we're going to define what's called a open paragraph, and open paragraphs are going to be an example of how we fall through code. And then I'll also show you an example of a closed paragraph, which is going to be executed by name. So we're going to have sub1 here, and what this is going to do, I'm going to set this code up so that whenever it executes, you can see what's happening. So I'm going to say in paragraph 1 is going to execute. And then after that, I'm going to say perform. And what it's going to do is call for another one to execute. And then I'm going to call display, which I'll create in a second. And I'll say here, returned to paragraph 1. I want to slip something else in here where I can just show you real easily how you can execute code multiple different times. And you can do that with perform also. So let's say perform 2 times. And what we want to do is, what we want to perform 2 times is to call display and repeat twice. And we can tab that in and then type in end perform. And then finally, stop run, which will stop the execution of the program altogether. All right, so there we got our first. And now I'm going to create sub3. And then I'll go and create sub2 afterwards. So all this is going to do is say in paragraph 3, and then after this, I will create number 2, which is going to be called from sub1. So sub2, and what it's going to do is display in paragraph 2, and then it's going to call for the third to execute, and then I can say returned to paragraph 2. Okay, so I set all this up basically just as it executes. You're going to be able to see in the output over here exactly how it works. And if we run it, you're going to see first we hit in paragraph 1, and then we jump into paragraph 2, into paragraph 3, return to paragraph 2, and then the program ends itself. And I made a little bit of an error here. What I'm going to do is, to make this work, is I'm going to call this sub4 just to use a common thing here. And I'll say display, and I'll go repeat again. And then what I can do is say perform and sub4 2 times. Let's just get rid of this altogether. And here we can see our execution where we call repeat. All right, so just a bunch of messing around here basically. Now on a related note, you can actually go and create what are called subroutines in separate programs and then pass values back and forth. So let's say we have these values right here. What we're going to do is we're actually going to take them and we're going to create another function that I call getSum. Okay, so we have that. Then inside of the linkage section, inside of data division, we're going to be able to come in here and define those same variables, right, like this. Now we're going to want to give them a different name, so I'm just going to put an L in front of here, and this is going to be the subroutine we call. Now what we're going to do inside of this is down inside of procedure division, we're going to type in using, and then we're going to use L num1, and these are going to be values that are passed inside of it. And then we'll do L sum like that. And then what we can do is any value we change that was passed inside of here is automatically going to change in the calling program. So we could say compute L sum is going to be equal to L num1 plus L num2. And then we have to type in exit program instead of stop run. And we can save this file now. And we're going to call it from our original program by just coming down into procedure division and then say call and the subroutine and using and the values that we want to pass inside of it in exactly the same order. Otherwise, they won't know what to do. And we'll have this be sum1. And then we could do something like display and number 1 and plus and number 2. And of course, this is a simple program, but you can basically do anything, any type of code you'd want, just as long as you pass those values inside of it. And one other thing to be aware of is whenever you compile this, you're going to compile it with an M instead of an X. Whoops, what did I do here? I did something silly over in get sum. Oh, I just need to make this lsum1 and lsum1 like that. Come back over inside, compile, and now it worked. And then go and compile the original one. Again, see the difference, M and X. Compile that, and then run it, and you can see that it worked. All right, so that's how subroutines work, and that's how linkage works, and a whole bunch of other different things. And now I'm going to talk about looping. Okay, so in working storage, what I'm going to do is create an index that I'm going to increment, and picture clause, and you could also go like this, 9.1 like that. You can do whatever you like. I'm going to give it a starting value of 0. And then down inside of here, what I want to do is demonstrate what a while loop would look like in COBOL. So I'm going to say perform, and I'm going to change the paragraph name to output data. And inside of this, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to say with test after until the index is greater than 5. So basically, this is going to execute until this condition right here is met. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to go to a for loop to execute. So I'm going to use go to for loop. And then down inside of here, I'll define a paragraph that's going to be output data. And what it's going to display is the current value of our index. And I'm going to increment that value. So add 1 to our index. And then after it's done, it is going to call this other paragraph that I am going to use to demonstrate a for loop style inside of COBOL. And what this guy is going to do is perform output data to another paragraph. And I will say varying index from 1 by 1 until the index is equal to 5. So what it's doing is it's taking that index value, assigning it a value of 1, and then it's going to increment that value by 1 each time until the index is equal to 5 again. And then after it does all that, I'm going to call stop run to stop execution of my program. I can get rid of this stop run. And then inside of output data 2, I am just going to display the index again, the index value. So index value. So I'm showing you multiple different loops here all in one program. Come over here. Whoops, what did I do? Oh, I forgot the period at the end of this. There we go. Execute. And there you can see 2 different ways that we can increment values. First using a while loop type of style and then a for loop type of style. All right, so cool stuff. And now what I want to do is show you how we can edit data. Now we are going to be able to format data as it is entered using what are called edited pictures. So inside of working storage, I'm going to go and create a starting number and pick 9. It's going to have 8 values inside of it, followed with 2 decimal places. And this is going to be really sloppy. And I'm going to throw a whole bunch of zeros in front of there. 1, 1, 2, 3, and 55. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is define a whole bunch of edited pictures. So let's say that we would like to replace the zeros with space and then also add a decimal point. Well, I'm going to give this a name, and basically I'm going to say that its name is no0. Say pick, and then we're going to put in a Z for every one of these values. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are Z's, and then we're going to have 9.99 for our decimal place. And there we go. Next up, I would like to have no zeros and commas. So I'm going to go and say no 0 plus commas. How we would pull that off is go pick ZZ, and then you're going to define where you want your commas to show up at. So ZZZ, and then ZZ9, and then we are going to throw in our commas, and there we go. And you're going to see how these work out whenever we're done. I could also convert to dollars. So let's say this, and I'll just call this dollar. And by dollars, that means I just want to use a dollar sign. So we'll go pick, and then again, and I also want to use commas and all the other stuff. So I'm going to go $2 and then $3, whoops, and then $2 and 9 and 99. And what else would we like to do? Let's say that we would like to also, I'm going to show you styling for like a birthday or a date. So I'm going to say birthday like this, and this will be pick, and 9 and 8 total values that are passed in. And I can say 12, 21, 1974, the date in which supposedly our simulated world was created. And then what I want to do is I want to go and create what's going on if this is a date. So I'm just going to go 99 / and you can play around with all this stuff and see what sort of things you can come up with. And there you go. I have / in there. All right. So now down in the procedure division, to use these edited pictures, you can just go and get the starting number and throw it into no 0 like this, and then display no 0. Whoops, what'd I do? There we go. Display, and get rid of those quotes, and just display no 0 like that. Now we're going to do this for all the other ones and see what happens. So again, this time I'm going to use starting number, and I'm going to use no 0 plus commas. And then just go and get this guy right here and paste him in there, and we'll see how it changes. Once again, we're going to go, let's move this up and see if I can fit that. Then I am going to go and do the styling for dollars. So dollar, and then I'll put dollar on the screen, and then also do date. So we will go and change this to B day, and change this guy right here to a date, and then output a date. And if we come in here and run this, you're going to see how all of that information was translated here on our screen. All right, we're going to do a lot more with editing and editing strings and so forth. But first, what I want to do is talk about the difference between floating point calculations and decimal arithmetic. Okay, so most programming languages that you've probably ever used use what is called floating point calculations. Only problem is they can introduce errors. COBOL is going to use what is called fixed point decimal arithmetic instead, and that's going to allow you to define how you are going to round values. And it's one of the reasons why COBOL is used by every financial institution pretty much in the world. Okay. Well, at least in the United States. So we're going to define a price here, and we're going to come in and go just define that, and it's going to have 2 decimal places exactly like that. I am then going to define a tax rate on whatever this is that we're buying, and I'm going to say that that's going to have 3 decimal places, and it'll be value, and then what I'm going to have it be is just 0.075, and then we're going to calculate our full price based off of those 2. So we'll say pick again 9 and 4 digits, and we'll say that this is going to have 2 decimal places. All right, so those are the values we're working with. Now, if I want to use decimal arithmetic with these, I can say display and have the user enter a price like this. And let's say that we don't want any new lines. We want this on one line. We can say with no advancing, and then come in and accept and assign that value to price. Now what I can do is call compute and full price, and rounded equal to price plus, and then inside of parentheses, I want to multiply price times my tax rate. And then after I do that, I can go and say display and price plus tax, and then display the full price. And stop run, of course. Oops, forgot to put a period here. Run it and execute, enter price, and I can say, you know, whatever I want to do. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 98. And it's going to automatically go and make those calculations. So very important information here. And now what I want to do is show you multiple ways we can manipulate strings. All right, so I went and threw a whole bunch of strings inside of here because I figure you have a good grasp on exactly how to define strings. Pause your screen and type those out, or go and get the code, which is free, whatever you would like. Now I'm going to manipulate this information. First thing I want to do is I want to take the string, sample string, Erie Beef Sneezed. I just picked that because I had a whole bunch of E's. That's no other reason. I know that's strange. Okay, what I want to do is I want to take that string and count all the characters. So I'm going to say inspect sample string, tallying, and I'm going to put them inside of number of characters, 4 characters. There we go. And that will do that. And then I can come in and say display number of characters and go and get the number of characters. All right, what else would I like to do here? Well, I'd also like to come in and tally up the number of E's. So I'm just going to copy this, paste this inside of here. Again, sample string tallying, except this time I'm going to store the result in the variable number of E's, and then I can just say for all E's, okay? And number of E's, and go and change this to number of E's, okay? And we're gonna do better things than this. Let's say that I would like to convert a sample string into uppercase. How could I do that? Well, I'm gonna say display, call function, and uppercase, and throw sample string inside of there. We're also going to be able to convert to lowercase. I know it's already lowercase, but nonetheless, just by coming in and changing this to lowercase. We're also going to be able to join strings. So to do that, we're going to use a function called string. And what I want to do is get the first name, and this is a little bit more complicated. What delimited is going to do is specify the end of the string. So if I say delimited by size, that means that I want the whole entire string. And just so you can see that this is separated from that, I'm going to move that down. So I'm going to take the first name that we have inside of here, which is Martin, and I'm going to get the whole thing by saying by size. I'm then going to put a space in between it and say that I want to get the last name, which is also going to be delimited by size, which means I want the whole thing. And then I want to store that new concatenated or joined string into FL name, first and last name. And then I can come in and display FL name. And that's a way that we can go and do a whole bunch of things here. Let's go and run it. Number of characters 18, number of E's is 8. And you can see uppercase, lowercase, and how I joined those two strings together. Well, let's go and do even more complicated ways of working with strings. What I want to do here is I want to get just the first word up to a space. And I'm going to start with the first and last name, which we just created. So I'm going to say string FL name and delimited by and spaces. So it's going to get up to the first space. I want to throw a space in there with our result. I'm then going to go and get the middle name delimited by size because I want the whole thing. I'm going to go and want a space in my output, and then I'm going to get the last name also, last name also delimited by size. And I want to put all of this information into first, middle, and last name. And then another thing we can do is we can check to see if there's an overflow, which means we flowed outside of there. I'm going to have this set up so this overflowed, and I'll say display overflowed. And otherwise, after this, what I want to do is say that I want to display the first, middle, and last name. So a whole bunch of different things here. This, and run it. And you can see that it did overflow, but we got our result we were looking for, Martin Luther King. All right, let's do another one. What I want to do here is go and work with these guys. The egg is number 1 and is the big chicken. Okay, so a whole bunch of weird things here I'm doing. So I'm going to say string SSTR1. So string 1, that's the egg. So I'm going to go and get that. And I want the whole entire thing delimited by size. Throw a space inside of here for our output. Whoops. Next line. And what I want to do here is grab is and the space up to the number sign. So I'm going to grab just this part right there. How can we do that? Well, I'm going to say SSTR, that's 2, delimited, and I want to delimit, I want to get the space. So I'm going to change the delimited part to the number sign instead. So throw that there, number sign. And then I want to insert the above, what I have here, starting at index 1 as defined by what is called a pointer. So I'm going to say into destination and use with pointer, and that's going to be, pointer is a value of 1, so I want to put it in the first position. And here, whoops, I did it right. And then here, I can also go and check for an overflow. So this isn't going to overflow though. And then after that, go and display my destination. And bounce over here, go, test it, run it. And you can see that I was able to create the egg is chicken like that. All right, let's go and do another one. Unstring is going to split a string into multiple different strings based off of a delimiter. So unstring, SSTR1, delimited by space, and it's going to take that information and throw that information into 2 new strings, which is going to be string 3 and string 4. And then we need to call end unstring after that. And if I do that, I can go and display SSTR4. And there we go. And this and like this. And here you can see I was able to jump in there and grab just the egg out of that string. Okay, so there is a whole bunch of different ways we can manipulate strings, and you're going to see more as the tutorial continues. But now what I'm going to do is show you how you can work with files. All right, so the very first thing you want to do, if you're on a Mac like I am, you just come in here and say touch and customer, and this is a DAT file like that, and LSA, and you can see I created it just like that. If you're on Windows, you're going to have to be logged in as an administrator, and you're going to type in a command like this, and customer DAT again, and this stands for 2000 bytes. And so that's what you need to type in to create a file that you're going to be able to work with. All right, and now I'm going to come in here and start working with it. So I am going to, inside of environment division, I'm going to connect a name to my customer file. And to do this, I need to say input and output section. See, I said there was going to be additional sections. And then I'm going to go file, control, and then inside of here, I'll say select customer file and assign to it our new file we just created, which is customer DAT, like this. I'm going to define that my organization is line sequential, and that just means that each piece of data is going to take up its own line inside of my file. And each time we add in new ones, well, then it's going to create a new line. Access is sequential. And I'm going to show you other ways of working with files. So that just puts this name, assigns this name to this file. That's all we just did there. All right. So down inside of our data division now, I'm going to put in file section, which I already did. Now down inside of the file section, I need to describe the data that's going to be in the file. So I'm going to type in FD, and this stands for file description, which, like I said, just describes the file layout. And I'm going to call this customer file. So customer file like that. Let's get this out of here. And then I need to design my customer record. That's what it's called, a record. So we'll say customer data, and it's hierarchical. So I'll say O2, and I'm going to have an identification number. And let's have this be 8 in length. I'm also going to have a customer name, and that's going to be broken into 2 pieces as well. So we'll say first name and X, and let's say we want to allow for 15 inside of there. And then we're going to do something pretty similar for our last name. So we'll go last name, and exactly like that. Okay, now what we need to do is define the same thing down inside of our working storage section. So I'm basically just going to copy all of this stuff and paste it down inside of there. I'm going to change this to WS customer. So WS customer, and I'm just shortening this up a little bit. And WS ID number, and WS customer name, and WS again and again. And there we go. Now down inside of here, where we're actually going to work with this stuff, basically, something to understand is that COBOL basically focuses on working with external files or databases. And here we're going to work with a sequential file. And these files are going to work, or they're going to differ from direct access files in that your direct access files are going to have keys associated with the data. And I'm going to show you those here in a second. And just to cover the basic nomenclature here, a field is just going to be an individual piece of information. So for example, first name would be called a field. A record is going to be a collection of fields for an individual object. So one customer piece of information. And then of course the file just contains numerous records. And what we're going to do here is we're going to process a file by loading one record into memory at a time. And this is called a record buffer. And what we need to do here is open the file, and if it doesn't exist, we're going to create it. And then we're going to add all of our fields, write them to the file, and then close the file. So that's what we're going to do in this part of the code. So first off, I'm going to say open, and for output, and I can refer to the file using customer file because that's how I defined it. Then inside of it, I need to put some information in there. So I'm going to say, how many different spaces? Oh, I put 8 inside of here. I'm going to change this to 5 because I think that's more than enough for an ID number. All right, so especially for this because I'm definitely not going above that. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, and ID number. And then I'm also going to move Doug into the first name. So first name, and move Thomas into last name. So there's last name. Whoops, don't forget to put the period there. And then to write this, I just say write customer data. And then end write. And after I've done that, I can close my customer file like this, customer file, there it is. And then stop run, of course. And I got a bug inside of here. I'm going to go and get rid of the configuration section here. And we can run this. And there we go. Now we can check customer dat. And if I open that file up, you're going to see right here that we have the ID number as well as the first and last name. So everything worked out great. And up next, I'm going to show you how to set up a system where you'll be able to continue entering customer information directly inside the terminal. All right, so everything is exactly the same as what we had before, but I'm going to change down here inside of the procedure division to allow you to enter information in the terminal. Well, first off, I'm going to extend the data, which means I'm going to add it to the end of the file. So to do that, you have to change this to open and extend customer file. Then inside of it, we can say display, and it's going to allow, I'm going to make an even better version of this very soon. So I'm going to say with no advancing, and the user is going to be able to go and send in their ID number. And then I'm going to do this with all the different parts. So we're also going to have the first name. So customer, let's just change this to first name. And then we will, with no advancing, accept, and this is going to be first name. And then we're also going to do this for last name. So customer, change this to last name, and go and accept the last name. And again, we're going to write the customer data and then end that. And don't forget stop run down here. Run it, execute it, customer ID. Let's go and have this be 2. And first name, we'll put Sally, and last name, we'll put Smith. And that's it. Program ended. And if we go and check out customer data, I'm going to use text edit. You can use whatever you want. You can see that now we also added Sally Smith. All right, so good stuff. And now what I want to do is show you how to receive or read data from inside the database. So we're going to be using this stuff up here inside of working storage. And I'm just going to throw one more inside here. And this is going to allow us to react to the end of the file. So I'm going to go 01 WSE for error end of file. I'm going to say pick A1. All right. So down inside of here, I'm going to say open input. So input customer file exactly as before. And I can get rid of all of this stuff. So the whole way through write, because we're not writing the file, we're reading. And I'm going to say perform and until WS end of file is equal to yes. And I can get rid of all this. And what do I want to do? Well, I want to read the customer file. So customer file into WS customer, and then at end move Y into WSEOF, which means we reached the end of the file, and not at end. I want to display the customer, and then after that I can go and end my reading of information, and also end perform, and then don't forget to close the customer file, which I have here already. Anytime you open a file, you have to close it. Otherwise, it probably won't write. Oh, I put into instead of to. Whoops, save that. And if we execute it, you're going to see it output all of the customer information here just as we would expect. And I'm going to show you how to get the individual pieces out as well. But now what I want to do is talk about how to make reports. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to work with reports. Now this is going to be rather simplistic. I wanted to cover it, but I could do a 5-hour, 10-hour, 20-hour video tutorial on working with reports in COBOL. So this is just going to be very simple. All right, it's not going to be simple, but it's a simple report. All right, so we're going to be reading customer information from our customer file that we just created here and turning it into a report we can use. So what I want to do is I want to define the file to save my report into. So what I'm going to do for this is say select, let's go and tab that in. So I'm going to say select and customer report and assign to and go customer report dot RPT. And organization is going to be line sequential, just like before. We're going to see other types of files we can use here as well. And don't forget the dot at the end. Then we're going to be using our customer file like we have before. And organization is going to be line sequential. And we don't need this, so let's get rid of it. And there we go. And this, of course, is where we're getting our data from. Now down inside of the file section, I'm also going to need to define my customer report. So I'm going to go FD and customer report and O1 print line pick. And this is just going to be a default for printing lines. And then I'm going to have the information, all of my customer data. So customer file, customer data, ID number, customer name, first name, last name. Then I'm going to come in and define my end of file with 88 like I talked about previously. And I'm going to have this be value and get high value as a default value. Now down inside of working storage, this is where things get complicated. So I'm going to break the report up into different pieces. So there's going to be a header, there's going to be a footer, there's going to be columns, there's going to be, for outputting information, and so forth and so on. So I'm going to start off by saying page heading, and here I'm going to say define filler, and you use filler whenever you don't need to identify labels. So I'm going to say pick and X13, and this is going to contain the value of customer list. So customer list, which is what will be displayed at the header of our file. And then for the footing or footer, I'm going to type in page footing, and again, O2, use filler again, pick X and 15, and this is just going to be space, 15 spaces, again, filler and pick and X7, and this is going to have the value of page. So there'll be individual pages on the report. Whoops, what did I do there? Let's get rid of that and throw our quotes inside of here. Quotes and another quote. And then finally, we'll have our page number itself. So I'm going to give this a name. So page and num pick and Z9. Whoops, Z9. Now what I need to do is define my headings for all the data that's going to print. And like I said, these reports can be made up to look really, really nice. I'm just keeping this very simple though. So it's just going to print out all of the headings for the pieces of data. And I'm going to say value. And so it's going to print ID number and a certain number of spaces and first name and a certain number of spaces that I'll have to figure out, and last name, dot. Then I'm going to define my customer detailed lines of data. So I'm going to call this customer detail line, and again, filler, pick X value, and this is just going to be a space. Then I have to set aside enough space for my customer ID. So customer ID, and that is going to be, what we set that as 5. So there's that. And again, I'm just defining how the space is going to be set up. So again, we're now going to define a space that's going to go between the ID and the first name. So X4, and again, those 4 spaces are going to be spaces. And then we have to go and get our first name. So print first name, pick, and I said that the maximum size for a first name was going to be 15. And again, we're going to get our filler space. So I'm defining that I want to have spaces between all these different things. That's all that I'm doing here. And let's just have this be 2 there. And then I'm going to do a similar thing for our last name. So it's going to print out each of these pieces of data all on separate lines. So I can have that be last name, pick, and it's also 15 in length. Then I'm going to define what gets printed at the end of the report. So I'll go like this and report footing, and it'll be pick X 13, and we'll have a value that says end of report. And then I'm also going to want to track the number of lines that are used so that I know when to print footers and new headers and all that stuff. So I'll say line count, pick, and 99, and we'll start with a value of 0. Have to go 88, new page required for values 40 through 99. And then we have to also track our number of pages. Like I said, so page count is pick, and that's so that we can put, you know, what page we're working with. And it's going to start off with 0. Now down inside of this guy, I'm going to say open for input our customer file because we're going to be reading information from it. I'm also going to open for output because we're writing to the report, the customer report. And then you say perform print page heading, which is going to be a paragraph I'm going to create here in a second. Then after I print my page heading, I'll come back here and I want to read the customer file so that I can, or a record, so that I can go and get that. So I'm going to say customer and file, and I'm going to keep reading until the end. So I'll say end set WSEOF to set that it's an end of file, set that to true, and after I get to the end of the file, I will stop reading. And then I'm going to call another paragraph that I am going to create also here in a second called print report body until I get to the end of the file. I'm then going to call write print line from report footing. And I'm going to define that I want this to be after advancing 5 lines. And then I can close both the customer file as well as the customer report because I'll be done. So now what I need to do, and also I want my stop run to be up here after that. I have no idea how linkage section got down here. Let's get rid of that altogether. Oh, I see what it did. Change this to 5 lines. And that's how it got there. And then after that, we can put the close customer file and close the customer report and create our paragraphs that are going to print the headings as well as the report body. So the first thing I want to do is print the heading. So print page heading, which I referred to above. And I'm just going to say write print line from page heading after advancing page, and then print, or yeah, I'm going to call write again print line from heads after advancing 5 lines. And what I'm doing is going and getting this guy up here, so page heading, getting the customer list right here, and then I'm also going and getting the headings right here. Okay, so that's where those are coming from. And then after I do that, I can move 3 to line count so that I can track my page counts. I am also going to say add 1 to, to page count. All right, I know it's a little bit complicated. It's sort of one of the weirdest things I'm covering in this tutorial. Up next, I'm actually going to make a pretty normal program. So to print our report body, I'm going to say if new page required, which means I'm running out of space. Well, in that situation, I'm going to get page count and save it to the page number that we're storing, and write print line from page footing. So we're going to know that we're at the end of the line, so we want to print a footer at the end of this report after advancing 5 lines, and then perform print page heading, because after we print a footer, we have to print the heading, just the way it works. All right, and then we'll do an end if, and then finally what we need to do is move the data to be printed to our report. And how you do that is say move ID number to print, and our customer ID is the name we gave to it, and then again move and the first name to that slot right there. Whoops, didn't take. And that is first name. And then we need to move our last name as well, like this, and then just change this to last name and spell it right, last name and last name. And then we can call write print line from customer detail line after advancing 1 line. And after we do this, we need to increment the value of line count, because we have a new line and we need to know when we need a new page. And then I can call read customer file once again and say at end set that we are at the end file. So change that, whoops, to true. And then since we're at the end, we can end read and put a period at the end there. All right, I'm sure I have an error here. And I do. Warning, line not terminated by a new line, 75. Oh, really? Okay, save that. And line 34. And I don't know what I was doing here, but this should be 9 and a 5 inside of there. All right, fix that. And let's try to run it. And let's check if it worked. Here we are. You can see there is the report. Open with. I'm using text edit again. You can use whatever text editor you want. And there you can see is our report. How we printed the customer list. How we printed, I need to mess around with the headings to get them a little bit better, but whatever. And there's the IDs, and there is end of report, and so forth and so on. And if you put additional information in here and create new pages and a whole bunch of other stuff, springs up inside your report. All right, so there's a rough overview of how to generate reports. And now I want to create kind of a real application that's going to allow you to work with customer data. All right, so this time we're actually going to create a real program. It's actually going to feel like a real program anyway. Okay, so what this is going to have is a menu system that's going to allow you to add, update, delete, as well as display customer data. So what we're going to need to do is down inside of file control, what I want to do is select to use a file with keys. Now to do that, this has to be an indexed file instead of a non-indexed file. And what this will allow us to do is to randomly access versus access information sequentially, which is what we do with sequential files. So I'm going to say select customer file, but I'm going to assign to, I'm going to change this to lowercase, customers, doesn't matter, but customers, and I'm going to use a text file here. And then I'm going to, organization is going to be is indexed, like that, and access mode is going to be random, and we're going to have keys. So record key is going to be the identification number that we have already set up. So down we have data division, that's fine. Inside of file section, we're still going to say customer file. We're still going to say customer data, ID number. None of these are going to change. I'm just going to change this to 2 though, 2 digits for the ID number just to keep it a little bit neater. Customer name, it's all fine. Actually, to make it a little bit more simple, I'm just going to go and move this up to here and just have the first name and the last name be like this, so we're not dividing this up. Again, just to make it a little bit more simple. And we're not going to need to track this, so let's get rid of that. Now down inside of the working storage area, I'm going to track the menu choice that the user makes. I'm going to call this choice, and it is just going to be a number or numeric. I am going to also track whether we should exit the program or not. So I'm going to call this stay open and give this a value of Y for yes. And what else am I going to track? I'm also going to track whether the customer exists or not already in our file system. So I'm going to say exists and pick and X. Okay. So down inside of the procedure, I am going to define a paragraph here that's going to start executing. So start paragraph, and I am going to open. Let's go and tab this in. I'm going to, well, I'll tab it. All right, so I need to access the data randomly. So I need to open with IO mode. So I'm going to say I-O with our customer file. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to continue executing the output of a menu until the user says they don't want it anymore. So I'll say perform until stay open gets a value of no. And then I need to define what I want to display inside of our menu system. So I'm going to have blank, and then I am going to say display and put like a little menu on here. So I can say something like customer records and display, and then give the different options that they have. So if they press 1, that's going to allow them to add a customer, and we'll do a couple different options here. If they go and enter a 2, they're going to be able to delete a customer by ID, and throw this here, and 3 is going to allow them to update a customer, and keep on going here. And 4 is going to allow them to get a customer, get customer data. And then if they type in 0, that is going to quit the application. And then I am going to create an area where they will be able to enter this information. So I'll just put like a colon here with no advancing, so it stays on the line. And then I am going to accept whatever they picked, throw it into choice, and then we'll continue executing different paragraphs based off of the option they picked. And we'll use evaluate to decide on what we're going to do. So if the choice they selected is 1, well then I want to call a paragraph called add customer. And if it is 2, I am going to call a paragraph called delete customer. If they choose 3, I am going to say that I want to call update customer, and I'll create all these, of course. And 4 is going to, perform and get customer. And when n, I want to jump out of the loop. So I'll say when other move, actually I don't have to do anything. I'm going to go, if they don't pick one of the options I have here, then I will just set this to n to stay open, which is going to cancel the looping. And then I can go end evaluate like that. And also I can say end perform. Then after we do all of that, we need to close the file and stop execution. So I'll say close customer file and stop running the application. And there we go. Now I just need to create all those paragraphs. So let's get rid of all this also. So I am going to say add customer. What it's going to do whenever it's called is it is going to display space here just so we have some space. And then again, display. And I'll say enter ID. And whenever they do that, with no advancing, I am going to accept whatever the ID was that they passed inside. So ID number, and then display, enter first name, and they'll be able to enter a name inside of there. And I'll just go and steal this right here and paste that inside of there. And of course, accept, and this will be first name. Select that. Whoops, why didn't it get it? I don't know. Got it now. And then we're going to also ask them to enter a last name for this customer we're putting inside of here. So we'll just change this to last name and change this to last name. And then we can go and display another space if we'd like, just to break everything up a little bit. And now after we have all this information, we need to write it to our file. So I'm going to say write customer data and invalid key. In that situation, I am going to display that the ID they entered is taken, and otherwise I will end writing that information to our file. All right, so that's everything we need to add a customer. What do we need to do to delete a customer? Well, that's pretty easy. Delete customer. That is just going to be, I'm going to go display, throw that in there, and display again, and say enter customer ID to delete. Let's just copy this right there, and let's just paste that inside of there. So enter ID, let's say enter customer ID to delete, and accept the identification number, and then call delete customer and file. And in a situation in which they have an invalid key, meaning that it doesn't exist again, I will say key doesn't exist, and then end the delete. Like that. Now if we want to update a customer information, just say update, update customer, and again, just throw a space in there just to make it look a little bit neater. Paste, enter, what else do I want? Oh, I'm actually going to track if the customer exists or not. So I'm going to say move. I'm going to act as if the customer exists whenever we start off. Exists, and then change it based off of whether they do or they don't. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to ask them to enter an ID that they want to update. So display, enter ID to update, and with no advancing, I'm going to accept that ID number, of course. Then I want to read the customer, or mark N if they don't exist. So I'll say read customer file. There it is. And otherwise, invalid key. I am going to move N into customer exists. Like that. And end the read. Then I also want to display an error because the ID doesn't exist if it doesn't. So I'll say if customer exists is equal to N, well, display customer doesn't exist, else I will ask them to enter a new first name. enter the new first name. I'm going to copy with no advancing again. Of course, this is going to be put in first name. And I'm also going to get a last name. So just change this to last. And also change this to last. And then we need to end our if block here. After that's set up, I need to update the record for the matching ID. So just say rewrite customer data. Unless there's a problem, we'll say invalid key. And what are we going to display? We're going to display that customer wasn't updated. And then we need to end our rewrite like that. And also, we're going to show you how to get customer data. Again, I'm going to assume the customer exists. So I'll say this, and I'm also going to get this guy right here. I'm basically going to copy all this, paste that inside of there. So I'm assuming the customer exists, giving a new line. Enter a customer ID to find. ID to find. Store it in the ID. After I do this, I'm going to say read from the customer file. Handle any invalid IDs. Invalid key. Again, move N to customer exists, which means they don't. That guy right there. And end read. Display an error in the situation in which customer exists is equal to N. And that error is going to say customer doesn't exist. And otherwise, they do exist, and I can display that information about the customer. So display ID, and go and get the customer's ID number with the matching ID that you just typed in. And again, display here, go and get the customer's first name, and also get their last name. Paste that, change this to last, and change this to last. And then after this, we are done, and we can say, whoop, end if. And let's see if I made any errors. Yes, I did. Resume, and up here I type in customer exits instead of customer exists. Whoops, customer exists. And it says I have one other error, 84. Where is that at? Sometimes putting these periods in here causes an error. Let's get rid of that. And that guy right there. And it looks like that was it. Let's go and execute it. Oh, and the customer doesn't exist, so we're going to go touch and customer text. Run it again. And you can see customer records, add customers. So we can go 1, enter customer ID, and I'm going to say 01. Isn't that what I did? I said that I was going to just store one piece of information inside of there. Yes. All right. There it is. First name. Throw my name inside of there. Last name. Banis. And now we can go and get customer. So we'll say 4. Enter customer ID 01. And you can see I got it. We can go and update that information. 01. And let's give me a new first name, Paul, and there we go. And we can go and get customer again, 01, and that's updated. And we can also delete customer and 01 and get customer, and we're going to do 01 again. And it says customer doesn't exist and 0 to exit. And there you go. You just created a really pretty useful COBOL program. And in the next part of the tutorial, I am going to cover tables. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to work with tables. And basically, tables contain multiple data items like arrays. And indexes are called subscripts in COBOL, something to be aware of. And also, it's important to be aware that the subscripts start at 1 and not 0 like a lot of other programming languages. So what we're going to do is go down into our working storage area, and let's just start off simple and declare a one-dimensional table. So table 1 is what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to say this is a table of friends. So I'll just say friend. And I'm going to say that I am going to want to store 15 alphanumeric characters. And then I have to define how many spaces I want to set aside. So occurs 4 times. Now what I can do is jump down into the procedure, and I want to fill my 1D table with some data. So I'm going to say move, and I can say joy to and friend, and that's going to go in the 1 subscript. And then I can continue doing this as many times as I would like, as long as I don't fill up the allocated space that's available. So I'm going to put this in the 2nd subscript and keep on going. And there we are. So there we go. I threw those inside of there. And then I can go and get the individual pieces of data if I would like. So I can say I want subscript 1, or I can call for display on table 1, like that. Compile and then run. And you can see they all printed out. All right, so let's get a little bit more complicated. I'm going to come in and create a customer table that's a multi-dimensional table. So we can say O1 and customer table. And inside of it, I'm going to go and define a customer name. And I'm going to store 5 of these. So 5 times, times. And then inside of here, go O3, and we'll just have this be first name. And we'll say that we're going to hold 15 of those inside of there. And I'm going to do the same for last name. And so just change this to L, and that's good. And we can go and fill this information up. I'm just going to use what we have here already. So I'm going to say move Paul to, and we'll say F name, and that's in the first index. And then I'm going to come in again, and I'll say Smith to, and I'll change this to last name. I think you see how this is working out. Everything is lining up with the subscripts. And I can go and create another one here just so we have more than one. And again, this is going to be first name. And then we're going to do the same for our last name. Now let's just leave that as Smith. But of course, we have to change the subscripts here to 2. And again, I can display customer name. And also, I can come in and change this to customer table. Compile and run. And there you can see all those printed out. And they're sloppy just because I had to expand the size here to fill this. You can also come in and create tables where you declare the subscripts inside of them. So we'll say order table, and I'm going to say that there's going to be a product, and I'll just set aside what I want to do. Well, you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to say product, and then I'm going to say that I'm going to have 2 of them. So I'm going to occurs 2 times, and then I will indexed by I, just to do something different. And then down inside of here, I'll say that I want to have a product name, and let's just say that that's 10 in length. And I'm also going to have a product size, and I'll say occurs 3 times, indexed by J. And then on top of that, I'm going to also come in and have size type. So I'm going to have a store t-shirts inside of here at different sizes. Now down inside of this guy right here, I'm just going to go and get rid of all this. And I'm going to set the values for I and J to 1. And then I'm going to move blue shirt, I know it's very descriptive, into product. And I will initialize this with the I subscript. I'm also going to move S into product size. And here, I need to label this with I and J. Then I'm going to increment set again. So I'll say set J up by 1 to increment it. And then I'm going to move a medium, that's what this stands for, to product size. So I'm adding both a small as well as a medium to those guys. Make sure that's J. I'm going to get rid of this space because it's bugging me. Then I'm going to come in and decrement J. So J down by 1. Let's move this up here a little bit. And then I want to fill in the product information all in one go. So I can say move blue shirt. Well, let's make this the way it was. Blue shirt. And I can say small, medium, and large. And then I'm also going to say red shirt. And I have to put a space inside of here to accommodate all the space that I said that I wanted to set aside. And again, small, medium, and large. To order table. So all this information can be put in multiple different ways. I am then going to say perform get product and create a loop here. I from 1 by 1 until I greater than 2. And I have to go and create get product, of course. So I'll go get product. And what get product is going to do is display product, whatever the value of I is. And then I will go perform, and I'm going to call another paragraph here called get sizes. And I'm going to get all of them. And I'll be varying J this time from 1 by 1 until, and I know that there's going to be 3 values inside of there. So then I can come down and create get sizes. Hopefully, if anybody's still watching, if you are, please take a second and tell me. Sometimes I feel like I sit in my basement and talk to myself. I would greatly appreciate it, more than you can imagine. All right, so there we got our sizes. And also, I'm going to create lookup here, and I'm going to search for a value. So I'll say I to 1, and I can call search product, and then I'll say at end display product not found. All right, we're doing a lot of stuff here. Then I'm going to say when product name, oops, make sure you keep that capitalized, otherwise you get an error, is equal to, and then I'll have what I'm searching for. Of course, you could get user input and search for a specific thing. Well, whenever that happens, I'm going to say display red shirt found. And then I can end my search. And then we also have stop run. Never forget stop run. And the other thing I'm going to do is up inside of here, before this guy is called, I am going to call go to lookup to perform our search. Compile, run, and there you can see we were able to find or go and output all of that information we input and also search, which is pretty cool. All right, and now what I want to do is show you how to pre-fill tables. All right, so in working storage again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a product table, and it is going to have product data inside of it. So product data. And because we don't need to identify our labels for our data in this string, we're going to use filler like we have used before. So I'll say pick X, and I'm going to say 8, and I'm just going to throw some information in here. So I'm going to say red, small, medium, and large. Then I'm going to do that for 3 more of these guys. So we'll also go blue and like that. And why don't we do green? Let's have this be a maximum of 5 spaces. So that's the reason why I'm doing that there. And that means I'm going to have to put another space inside of there. I think that's right. All right. Or maybe not. No, I don't need to because green's going to fit. All right, so cool. All right, so then, again, we can come down here and I'll say filler and redefines. And this is the redefines clause that's going to allow me to pre-fill my tables. I'll say product data, and I'm going to say shirt occurs 3 times. And then inside of here, I'll go and define product name, pick, and X. And remember, to accommodate this, I want this to be 5 in length so that we can have green inside of there. And then also product sizes. Pick again, and these are just going to be individual letters or alphanumeric, or no, alphabetics is what they're called. Occurs 3 times. All right. And then after this, if the data is stored as a string, but you want to use it as a numeric, I'm going to show you another use for redefine. So I'm going to call this change me, and say O2, and I'll just call this text number X, and let's say it's 6 in length. Well, what you can do is go O2 and float number and redefines. This is actually really cool whenever you see what this does. And we'll say text number and pick 9, 4, and this is going to have 2 decimal places. And I can come down here inside the procedure. I'm going to do some other cool things, but I'm going to say display the very first shirt. I can do that. And then what I'm going to do is move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to text number. And you're going to see that if we go display float number, that's going to output exactly the way that we want it to. So let's come up here, compile and run it, and you can see it through the decimal place in there, and now you're working with floats, and that happened automatically, so that's pretty sweet. And there's a lot of other programming languages could learn from COBOL, seriously. All right, and another thing I want to do is I want to be able to accept a string and then convert it into a usable float. So I'm going to say string number and pick X7, and then I'm going to go 1 and split my number and O2, and this is going to be the whole part of our number. I'm going to go pick and 9, 4. We're going to split this value in half. Let's throw zeros in there by default, and then we will go and get the floating point part of our number. So I'll say pick, and that's just going to be 2 decimal places. Value, 0. Now what I'm going to do is go and define that floating point number and use redefines on this with split number and define what that's going to look like. It's going to be 5 digits, or or 4 digits, and then 2 decimal places. And then what I can do is go and use an edited clause to go and convert this into money. So I'll throw that in there like that, and 2 more, and a 9, and also insert a decimal place. So lots of cool stuff here. And then we can come down inside of here, and I can say display and enter a float, and don't advance to the next line. And after this, I can accept that information from our user. Then I'm going to use unstring, which I talked about earlier, with our string number, and it will be delimited by whatever the decimal place is, or I can also delimit it by spaces. And where I want to put those 2 guys is in the whole number variable as well as in the float. And then we can do move, and with our floating point number, wrong place, move floating point number to our dollar number, and then display those results. So display $num. Compile, run, enter a float, and what did I say it was? It's going to be 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, let's make it be 4. 2, 3, 4. I don't know, I'll figure it out. And 78. And well, you can see it cut it off, but either way, that's what we were looking for. So cool stuff. All right, and now what I want to do is show you how to sort files. All right, so what you're going to have to do here is either use COBOL, you can do this as homework, to go and pre-fill all this information, or what you can do is just go and create it in a basic text editor. But what I have here is I have a bunch of names, 5, Derek, Paul, Sue, and Sally, but you may notice here that the keys are backwards, so 5, 4, 3, 2. And I'm going to show you how to go and sort them. So anytime we're working with files, I'm going to need my environment division. So I'm going to come inside of here, environment, if I can spell environment the correct way, and division, and then input and output section, and then file control. So file control, and I'm going to go select, and I'm going to have a work file where I'm going to be storing this information, and I'm going to call this work temp. You might need to use touch or the other thing that I showed you if you're a Windows user to create these files. And then I'll have the original file, and I'm going to be sorting these, and assign to, and this is going to be student dat, just like I showed you before. And I am going to make sure that I have organization is line sequential. And that just makes sure that all the individual pieces of data are on separate lines. And then I'm going to do the same with my sorted file. So this will be, I'll just call this sorted file. And this is going to be student2 dat. And then down inside of my data division, I'm going to create a file section and go and define my original file, what's inside of it. So original file, and it's going to be student data. And what did I have inside of it? Well, I had an identification number, ID number, and that's going to be just an individual number just to keep it nice and simple. And also I'm going to have a student name, and that of course is going to be an alphanumeric. I'm just going to keep it simple again, just have it 10 in length. And the SD is going to be used whenever you're working with sorted files. So, and this is, I'm going to use this for my work file. And again, it's basically going to be exactly the same. So why not just copy it and paste it inside of there. And I'm just going to sort this out by putting a W in front of all these, so I know they're work file versions. And then I'm also going to have my sorted file, and same stuff. And I'm just going to differentiate this by putting an S in front of all these because they are the sorted version. Okay, so then down inside of procedure, what I can do is to sort. I just go sort and define the work file on, and I decide which direction, ascending key. You can also do descending key. And I'm going to be doing this in reference to whatever the identification number is. And then I say using the original file and giving, which means the final result is the sorted file. And stop run, compile, run. And then if we jump over into our new student dat file, which remember it was 2, and open it, you can now see all those files are in order. All right, so cool stuff. And now for the final thing, what I'm going to do is show you how to merge files. And to do this, you're going to have to create student 3, and I'm going to open this up and open. And you can see it has 1 and Sam and 6 and Mark inside of there. All right, so what we're going to do with this is a lot of the same stuff, but I'm going to merge these files instead. So under file control, I'm still going to have a work file, which I'm going to call work temp. I am still going to have, well, let's call this instead of, let's call it file 1 because it's not, sorting or anything. Let's have that be student dat just to save from typing. And let's also come in here and call this file2, assign to, and I'm going to set this up with the student3 data that I just showed you. And then after that, I'm going to do basically the same thing. And this is going to be the final file where information is going to go. So paste that in there. And I'm going to call this new file. So new file, assigned to, and I'm going to make this assigned to the student4 dat file. Remember, you might have to create it. And then I need to define all of these individual pieces of data. So I'm going to have FD, and I'm going to call this file1, like that. Leave everything exactly the same. I am going to go and copy this because the next one's going to be basically the same. I'm going to call this file2, and I'll call this student data 2, and ID number 2, and student name 2. And then I'm going to have my work file again. I'm going to leave everything exactly the same. And I'm not going to have a sorted file, but I'll have the new file like I defined, which is where everything's going to go when it's done. And to differentiate that, I'll just put an N in front of all these guys. And there we are, and there we go. And then down inside of here, to go and make this work, I'm just going to say that I want to call merge work file on ascending key. I'm going to change this to N for our new file information. And using, and in this situation, I have to say that I'm merging two files. Which two are they? Well, file 1 and file 2. And I am going to provide finally all the results to new file. And there we are. Save it, come over here and compile it and run it. And student 4, as we defined right here, should now contain all that data. And as you can see, it does. All right, so cool stuff. And I could go into SQL, but I realized that if you guys want it, leave comments and say you want to see me cover SQL. It's extremely simple, and basically the most complicated part of it is setting up a database. But if you guys want that, leave requests and I will do it. And I was unable to cover object-oriented COBOL because my compiler doesn't work with that. If there's anybody out there that wants to provide the software that will allow me to teach people about object-oriented COBOL, go ahead and do it. Otherwise, I have went and created 2 files explaining how object-oriented COBOL works, and they were also available in the link to my website where all the code is, and it's all free. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and what I'm going to do now is show you how to install COBOL on Mac as well as Windows. All right, so if you want to set up COBOL as well as Visual Studio Code on your computer, if you're on Windows, this is what you do. Go get Visual Studio Code and just click on download. Pause your way through this video because I'm going to move pretty quickly. And then of course, you're going to open it up. So come down here, click on open. Whenever you do, you're going to have to accept the licensing agreement. Click on next. This is for Visual Studio Code. You can create an icon or not, but make sure you add it to your path. Click on next. Again, click on install. And then you're going to be able to launch this and click on finish. Now what you're going to want to do is, this is Visual Studio Code. Open it up. Click right here on this weird Tetris looking thing. And you're going to want to install COBOL. So come up here where it says search for extensions. Type in COBOL and pick the first one here. Come over here, click on install. After that installs, which means, the install button isn't there anymore, you're ready to go. Now what you're going to need to do is get something called Sigwin. So go to sigwin.com and come down here and click on setup x8664. Of course, come in here and open it after it downloads. And you're going to see something that looks like this. Come down here, click on next. Install from internet, click on next. And put it in the defined space. Don't move it anywhere else. Click on next. And then you're going to type Sigwin packages, which is where you're going to store all of the different files you're going to download. Click on next. It's going to give you a message if it doesn't exist. Yes, you want to create it. Use system proxy settings. That's fine. Click on next. You can choose any of these different download sites. One at the top is probably the best, or one near the top. Click on next. And then what you're going to need to do is come in here and download a whole bunch of different things. And what you're going to do is come over here, click on this little downward pointing arrow and select the bottom choice. And here's a list of the things that you're going to download. There are a ton of them. What's best is to go to this URL right here, and it actually shows you all the different packages you need to install. So go to that location and get a list of all the different packages you need. And I'll put a link in the description as well. Then after you do that, you can either choose to create a desktop icon or not, and click on Finish. After you do that, click on Cygwin, which is on your desktop, and this guy's going to open up. You're going to want to go to your temporary directory you have inside of here. So that's going to be local disk, your C drive, Cygwin 64, and temp. Then you're going to want to download GNU COBOL. So click on Download. And then, of course, we're going to come down here and click on Show in Folder. You're going to go and get the file that you downloaded, the GNU COBOL file that's compressed, drag it over into your temp directory that I just showed you. Then you're going to need to unzip it. So go to 7-zip, 7-zip.org, and download the version that you need based off of it if you're 32 or 64-bit. Of course, come down here and open it. And this is going to pop up. Click on Install. Then you're going to want to come inside of your file and click on 7-zip File Manager. And this is going to open up. You're going to locate the GNU COBOL compressed file and click on Extract. This is going to pop up like this. You're going to extract to your temporary directory. Click on OK. And then you will have everything set up here. Cygwin, of course, will be open, and you can see here is the directory inside of temp. And then what you're going to want to do is go to that temporary directory where you have that file located, and inside of Cygwin, type in /configure and make check and make install, and then wait for it to install. Now what we can do is come in here and type in this sample hello world type of program inside of Visual Studio Code and save it as hello.cob and put that in your just regular Cygwin home user directory and click on save, and then go and compile it. And I've already talked about how to compile the files. And after you do, run it by putting ./hello, and hello will pop up and you know everything's working. All right, so that's how you set up everything inside of Windows. Now I'll show you how to set everything up inside of Mac. All right, so we're going to be using Visual Studio Code again for Macintosh. So Visual Studio Code, go get it. Click on Download for Mac, and then come down here, click on Open. And after you do that, I drug this from my Downloads directory over into my Applications directory. Then you're going to open up Visual Studio Code, come over here and click on this guy. Looks like a little Tetris thingy. And then come up here and click and type in COBOL, select the very first option, click on Install, and that's going to install for you. Then go to Homebrew, and that is at brew.sh, and you're going to come down here and select all of this right here and copy it. Open up your terminal and paste in what you got off the Homebrew site inside of your terminal. If you can't find it, click the little magnifying glass up inside of here and click on and type in terminal and you'll find it. And then click on return for everything to execute. And eventually you're going to now type in brew install GNU-COBOL. And after you do that, you can go and test that it was installed by typing in COBC-version. You should see something like what you see right here. Then you can go inside of Visual Studio Code, type in this sample hello world type of application inside of here. Go over into your terminal, of course, in the directory where you saved hello.cob, and you're going to compile, and you're going to run like this, and it's going to output hello world, and the world's great because you have COBOL on your computer and everything's ready to go. All right, so there you go, guys. Covered as much as I could possibly cover about COBOL. All right, so just like always, please leave your questions and comments down below. Otherwise, till next time.